Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to deal with the main chapter, that is chapter 3, human reproduction. That too, the topic is female reproductive system. And the female reproductive system, they help in support the process of gametogenesis, ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, childbirth, and child care. And here, the reproductive structures in female start functioning when a girl enters into puberty. So, the puberty marks by the first appearance of menstruation. So, that period is called as menarche. And menarche onwards, the ovary will start functioning or producing the ova by the influence of sexual hormones, that is FSH, LH, etc. As a result of that hormonal action, every month, any one of the ovary will start producing ova. So that process of formation of ova is called as ovulation. And when we compare the male reproductive system and female reproductive system, male reproductive system will start functioning from puberty till the end of the or till the death of the person, because the sperm production is continuous. In female, it is taking place, the gametogenesis or gamete formation starts from menarche to menopause. So that is maximum of up to 50 or 55 years. So a limited period of years or limited period of time only the gamete formation is taking. So we can say that is the healthy reproductive period of a female. And when we'll move on to more in detail about the structures, it consists of a pair of ovary, a pair of oviduct, and a single uterus. The opening of the uterus is called as, or the mouth of the uterus is called as cervix, which leads into a genital tract that is called as vagina. And then external genitalia. It opens out through external genitalia. And in order to support the child care, there is a pair of accessory glands also is functioning, that is called as mammary glands. Then when we move into more into the physiology, there is a pair of ovaries which is attached to the sides of the uterus with the help of a ligament. And the ovary, every month from puberty onwards, already I said, they will produce the ova. Only single ova only will be produced. This will be carried away or will be transported through a tubular region. That tubular region, collectively, we can call it as oviduct. So there is on either side the oviduct, a pair of oviducts will be there. And the oviduct will lead into, from both the sides, the oviducts will lead into uterus, then into cervix, vagina, external genitalia. So all these organs are located within the pelvic region. And mammary gland also functionally support the process of ovulation, process of, or we can say it will produce milk at the time of lactation, and it helps in supporting the child care. A pair of ovaries, or we can say the ovaries are the main primary sex organ, and it helps in production of, or it is having, or it is performing a dual function. That means it produces gamete, female gamete. At the same time, it also helps in the production of hormones, sex hormones, mainly estrogen and progesterone. So in this, estrogen is maintaining the reproductive cycle, as well as progesterone is maintaining the pregnancy. So these two hormones are produced by ovary. So it is at the same time, it is acting as an endocrine gland, as well as it is acting as a gonad by producing the ovum. And the length of the ovary, that is it can be approximately 2 to 4 centimeter, and it is attached to the pelvic wall as well as to the body wall as well as to the uterus by the ligament. and it is covered by the ovary. When we are saying the structure of ovary, it is covered by a germinal epithelium, and it is a connective tissue sheath layer also is there, same as testis. It is called as tunica albuginea, and it is lined by germinal epithelium. There are many granulated cells are present within the germinal epithelium. So when the baby is in mother's womb, some of the granulated cells will rearrange and they will develop into follicles. So these follicles can be seen, or the inner part of the ovary, we can call it as stroma. It is divided into two layers. The outer layer or peripheral layer is called as cortex, and inner layer it is called as inner layer is called as medulla. So cortex region only, mainly the follicles will be arranged. In the cortex region, the follicles are arranged. Then in the medulla, the blood vessels, then lymphatic vessels, and then any connective tissues are present, means all those things will be scattered within the medullary region. When we move on to the diagram of ovary, here you can see very specifically the germinal epithelium, and within the germinal epithelium in the cortical region, the follicular development will start, and this follicles will convert into primary follicles in the pubertal stage, or in the pregnant, and when the baby is in mother's womb. That means in the fetal condition itself, approximately up to 5 months, there can be approximately 2 million follicles will be there. That means there will be a primary, there will be a in the center there will be a primary site, and which will be surrounded by a single layer of follicular cells. So that stage we will call it as primary follicle. So in the fetal condition, there can be approximately 2 million primary follicles, and the development of the primary follicles will be arrested. It will enter into meiotic division, but it will not be completed. It will be arrested at the prophase 1, that is diakinesis stage. Prophase 1 of diakinesis stage, that means the primary follicles, which will enclose a primary oocyte with a diploid condition, and it is surrounded by a single layer of follicular cells. So that stage it is called as primary follicle. Then after the childbirth, when the girl reaches up to puberty, few of the follicles, or majority of the follicles, will become atretic. So the meaning atretic means they will shrink, very few. That means from 2 million up to 80,000. So the remaining 80,000 follicles will retain within the ovary. So the remaining follicles will become, or will degenerate. Then when the girl is attaining the puberty, the follicular development will start. Out of this 80,000 follicles, nearly 20-30 follicles will absorb FSH every month from the pituitary, and the follicular development starts. Then gradually it will follow, or it will develop into. So the primary follicles, if the sexual hormones or the female hormones are functioning properly, means every month out of this 80,000, 20 or 30, 25 follicles will start developing by absorbing the FSH, and in that itself, finally the complete maturation, there will be only one follicle only will become matured into Graafian follicle. So the primary follicle will develop into secondary follicle. So primary follicle, I already said, it consists of a primary oocyte surrounded by a layer of follicular cells. As they gain more and more FSH, the follicular layers, the number of follicular cells will proliferate. So it will become 2 or 3 or 4 layers. So many layered, it can be up to 2 or 3 layers of follicular cells. Inside that again primary oocyte will be there. And this follicular cells again, so some of this immediately, that when they enter into secondary follicle, the primary oocyte as well as few layers of the primary follicle also will rearrange, and then they form a thick wall around the primary oocyte, and that wall is called as zona pellucida. So when they transform into secondary follicle, we can see around this primary oocyte there is a zona pellucida. And not only that one, the primary secondary follicle itself will be surrounded by a layer. That layer is called as a protective layer, that is called as theca. Then again the secondary follicle will gradually develop into tertiary follicle. When it is transforming into tertiary follicle, there can be the number of layers will become even more. That means it will be around 7 layers, and also few layers will convert into few approximately multi-layered condition. And not only that one, the theca, the outermost layer of that one is differentiates into theca externa, two-layered condition, theca externa and theca interna. So theca externa is protective, and theca interna is believed to secrete estrogen. So as the follicle is developing, the thecal layer also will form, and they will differentiate into theca externa and theca interna. And in that theca interna will start producing estrogen. And then again, so estrogen also will produce, FSH, LH also will produce. Then by the time the tertiary follicle will, so in between, within the tertiary follicle itself, gradually there will be a formation of a space inside, that is called as antrum. There is a lumen or a space can be formed, and gradually there will be fluid will be accumulated from the follicular layers. Cells will secrete fluid into that space, a fluid filled bag we can say. So that fluid filled bag inside the follicle we can call it as antrum. Then gradually the tertiary follicle will mature into Graafian follicle. So what will be the change in Graafian follicle? Means Graafian follicle, the antrum will attain maximum size, and the size of the follicle also will increase to the maximum, and this antrum will be filled with a fluid. That fluid is called as liquor follicle. So the matured ovarian follicle, by the time we can say it as the Graafian follicle. So once again, when the follicular development, when I am starting, when I am saying the follicle, the ova is, the formation of ova is taking place within the ovary, and initial stages when the baby is in fetal condition, the ovary will consist of, the cortical region of ovary consists of many primary follicles. The primary follicles will enclose the sex cell, that is called as primary oocyte. So the primary follicle will have, actually what makes the difference between primary, secondary, tertiary and Graafian follicle means, the up to that primary follicle which encloses the primary oocyte will be arrested at the stage of meiosis 1, prophase 1 and diakinesis. Then this will proceed when the girl reaches the puberty. So from puberty onwards, every month few follicles will absorb FSH, and they will grow, and then gradually they will transform into primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle and Graafian follicle. So primary follicle is only single layer of granulated follicular cells. When they transform into secondary follicle, 2 or 3 layers of follicular layers will be there, and not only that one, the primary oocyte which is surrounded by a thick layer, glycoproteinaceous layer, that is called as zona pellucida, and the follicle as such will be surrounded by a thecal layer, thick wall, that is called as thecal layer. When it transforms into tertiary layer, the number of follicular layers will be up to 7 layered outer covering follicular layer, and the thecal layer itself is differentiated into an outer layer that is called as theca externa, and an inner layer it is called as theca interna. So here theca interna is believed to secrete the estrogen, which regulate the secondary sexual characters and all other processes. Even ovulation, all those things are controlled by the estrogen. Then when this tertiary follicle is transformed into, so within the tertiary follicle, here and there we can see a fluid filled sac-like structures, that is called as antrum. Initially it is scattered, then gradually it will unite together, and they will attain maximum size with a maximum secretion of fluid inside that one, and it will bulge out of the ova. ovary, and that stage it is called as Graafian follicle. So what is Graafian follicle means? We have to say it is the mature ovarian follicle. It is formed from tertiary follicle. Then by the so in a healthy female, the reproductive cycle will say, or reproductive period will say, cycle when we are saying it is of 28 days duration. So on the 14th day, somewhere around in the middle of her reproductive cycle, the maturation of Graafian follicle will take place, and by the influence of hormonal luteinizing hormone, the antrum will burst, and that results in bursting of the Graafian follicle. And the by the time, so just before the ovulation, the first meiosis will be completed. So the Graafian follicle actually, so the first meiosis will be completed. That means the primary oocyte will divide into two, haploid, secondary oocyte. And it is not equal division. That is, one of the daughter cell will enlarge and the other one will be very small in size. So the enlarged one will transform into secondary oocyte, and the other one will transform into polar body, first polar body. So the mature Graafian follicle actually contain the secondary oocyte and a polar body. So secondary oocyte as well as the polar body, since it is produced from meiosis 1, the ploidy will be haploid. Okay, so that secondary oocyte is called as ova. So all these processes will be simultaneous. That is maturation of tertiary follicle into Graafian follicle. Simultaneously, meiosis 1 will be completed. So within the Graafian follicle, primary oocyte will be transformed into secondary oocyte and a polar body. So immediately after that, the antrum will burst and the Graafian follicle also will burst, and the detachment, or we can say the secondary oocyte, will come out of the Graafian follicle and it will be released outside the ovary. So that process of release of ova, or secondary oocyte, another term is secondary oocyte, from the Graafian follicle within the ovary, that is called as ovulation. So ovulation is normally it is taking place within the 14th day of the reproductive cycle. Then immediately after that release of ova, the remnant part of the Graafian follicle, that means the remaining follicular cells will rearrange, and then that will transform into a yellowish mass of structure that is called as corpus luteum. Luteum, the word meaning itself. Corpus means body, luteum means yellow. So it is called as corpus luteum. So here corpus luteum is acting as an endocrine gland, because they will gradually enlarge in size and then they transform into, or they will start secreting progesterone hormone. So here estrogen is produced by the follicles, developing follicle. That means the theca interna of the secondary, tertiary and Graafian follicle. Means here the progesterone is secreted by the remnant part of the ruptured Graafian follicle, that is called as corpus luteum. So corpus luteum will act as an endocrine gland which secrete the progesterone. Then towards the 25th day of, if there is no fertilization has taken place, that ova is not getting any chance to meet with the sperm, means then normally the corpus luteum will start regressing within the ovary. So the regressed corpus luteum is called as corpus albicans. Then towards the 28th day, it will be completely regressed, and again the next cycle of development will take place within the ovary. So ovary, there is a gradual periodical changes that starts from the fetal stage, but it will continue from puberty till the menopause period. The periodically release of development of follicles, then release of ova, then corpus luteum formation, corpus albicus formation, and again regression of corpus albicus, and then again transformation. So there is a periodical changes occurs within the ovary, and ovary starts functioning from fetal stage, then arrested in between at the childhood, and then again restarts functioning from the puberty, then it will continue throughout till the menopause. Then after the menopause, the whole sex hormone production also will be less, and then functioning of the ovary also will stop, and thereafter there won't be any follicular development. The reproductive period of the female will end with that. So this is the functioning and the structure of ovary. Then, so if the ovary is functioning from puberty till menopause, means maximum number of ova will be released can be of only up to 450 in number. So again, once again, germinal epithelium, different stages of follicles we can see within the cortex of the ovary. It can be vary from primary follicle, secondary into secondary follicle into tertiary follicle into Graafian follicle. Then Graafian follicle will result in release of ova, that is called as ovulation. The remnant part of the Graafian follicle will transform into an endocrine gland, that is called as corpus luteum, then corpus albicans. That is a brief idea about the structure of ovary. Then we will move on to the accessory ducts. So I said the ova will be released from the ovary. Then it will be collected by the duct system, that is a pair of oviduct, or we can say fallopian tube. So every month, any one of the ovary only will get a chance to release ova. Very rarely, only both will simultaneously release ova. That may end up with the twins and all. But normally, any one of the ovary will get the chance or will produce the ova. So this ova will be connected with the help of a funnel-shaped structure of the oviduct. That funnel-shaped structure is called as, it is approximately 10 to 12 centimeter the whole fallopian tube, and it is lined by 3 layers. The inner lining, same like uterus itself, and an innermost lining, endometrial lining of the ovarian tube also is ciliated. So with the help of ciliated inner lining of the fallopian tube, once it is collected, means it can be driven to the uterus. So if it is not, number of cilia is less, means there will be a chance of ova will stick on to the fallopian tube itself, and there if fertilization takes place, means the embryo development will be in the tube itself. That type of pregnancy is called as ectopic pregnancies or tubal pregnancies. And here I said there is the ova. Ova can be collected by a funnel-shaped structure. That funnel-shaped structure is called as oviductal funnel or oviductal funnel, and this funnel ends in finger-like process, that is called as fimbria. You have seen in the diagram. So it is collected by the movement of the fimbria, and through there is an inner side, there is an opening. Through the opening, the ova will be released or will be taken into the fallopian tube, and the tubular region itself is divided into two. The widened initial beginning region, or the entrance of that one, there is a widened region that is called as ampulla. Ampulla leads into a narrow region. That narrow region is called as isthmus, and isthmus will open into uterus. So uterus, when we are saying, it is highly muscular. So here the movement of the ova through the fallopian tube is enhanced by the ciliary movements of the inner lining, and if that cilia is less or the ciliary movement is less, means the ova will stick on to that. There if fertilization takes place, and then there the complications can arise. So if the cilia is more in number, and if they are moving properly, means automatically the sperm, if it is there, means ova will get a chance to meet with the sperm, and then the division will take place. Embryo can be slowly driven by the ciliary movements, and it will finally reach into the uterus. So the speciality of uterus, when we are saying, it is a bag of muscle, strong muscle, and the muscles are of striated muscle, not striated, it is smooth muscles. So it is involuntary in action, and it is highly muscular. So the layers of the oviduct as well as the uterus, when we are saying, here the figure it is given, and it is aligned by 3 layers. The outermost layer of that, it is called as perimetrium, Then middle layer it is called as myometrium. So perimetrium is connective tissue only. The myometrium, it is lined or it consists of strong group of or a very thick set of smooth muscles. It is involuntary in action and it is rhythmic in action. Then the innermost layer is called as, which is glandular, which is supplied with vascular as well as glandular. That means rich blood vessels are there. At the same time, glandular secretions also will be there. So that is called as endometrium, innermost layer. And the speciality of endometrium is every month this endometrium, if there is no pregnancy, means the endometrium will be peeled off because they are waiting for or they are ready to receive a human embryo in the early stages. So this endometrium should be very soft and spongy. So if that particular month, if there is no fertilization and if there is no embryo formation, if the embryo is not reaching into that one, means there is a chance of thickening of endometrial layer. So that by the end of that particular reproductive period cycle, the endometrium will be peeled out. And when this one is peeling out, the inner the blood vessels also will rupture. Glandular, the apical region of the glandular layer also will be ruptured, and the dead remnant parts of the ovum also will be released out through the cervix to the vagina in the form of menstrual flow. So the endometrial tissue is actually very spongy and vascular and glandular, whereas perimetrium is protective. Myometrium is helping in the movements of the uterine wall, especially at the time of childbirth. Violent contraction of this muscle layer only will help in expelling the fetus out of the uterus. So these are the three special features or three layers with a special characteristic function: protective function, then contractile function of the smooth muscles of the myometrium, then endometrial layer is for providing the glandular secretion as well as vascular supply to the developing embryo. So if fertilization, if the simultaneously the ovulation as well as the insemination is taking place as a result of sexual intercourse, the sperm will be deposited within the genital tract and they will pass through the uterus, and then finally it will reach us into the isthmatic junction, or you can say ambulatory region of that. There the ova is present, means surely there will be a chance of sperm to meet with the ova. So the process of meeting of ova with the sperm, it is called as fertilization. So the soon after the fertilization, the zygote formation will take place and the zygote will develop into early stages of embryo. That is, initially the division will take place. It will transform into the next one. It will transform into a ball of muscles that is called as morula, then into blastula, morula, then into blastula. That means a two-layered early stage of embryo. Then this blastula only will get implanted into the uterine region. So here I will read out: the uterus is the place where the early stage of embryo will get complete or will derive the nutrients and they will start growing, and then it will develop very fast, and within it will require 9 months to complete their development. So till that time it will be very well protected within the uterus, within a sac. That sac is called as amniotic sac. So these are the special characters. So the shape of the uterus, when we are saying, it is having the shape of an inverted pear-shaped structure, and the uterus itself is again attached to the body wall with the help of a ligament. Now this is the picture. All these characteristic features are described very well detailed in this one. An embryo will be attached with the help of a connective tissue. That connective tissue it is called as placenta. So which will act as the connecting link between the developing embryo and the uterus. So through that only the exchange of food, respiratory gases and removal of waste materials and all will be taking place between the fetus and the uterus. So the uterus then leads into a narrow canal connecting the uterus to the vagina, or we can say the mouth of the uterus. The opening of the uterus is that particular point is called, that region is called as cervix, and this cavity of the cervix is called as the birth canal. The cervix will open into into a external genitalia, that is vagina. So there is a tubular or cavity canal. That canal is called as cervix. And why it is called as birth canal means the expulsion of the fetus by the full development of the baby fetus. It will be expelled out through this channel, through this canal. So that is called as birth canal. By the influence of certain hormones, the birth will take place. Then we will move on to the next one, external genitalia of female. So we have discussed about ovary, oviduct, then uterus, then cervix, then vagina, then into the external genitalia. So it consists of external genitalia is the external opening. So here in female, in male, the external genitalia, it is common. That is the sperm release semen. The semen also will be discharged as well as the urine also discharged through a common tubular region, common urinogenital duct, that only we will call it as urethra. But in female, there is a separate urinary tract as well as separate genital tract. So the urine will be discharged through the urinary tract, and the menstruation as well as the vaginal disposal and all through the vaginal tract. So there is a common separate openings out there. So these two openings, the urinary opening as well as the vaginal opening, is located inside a depression, and that depression is called as vestibulum. Okay, vestibulum, and that is overlapped by, it is highly glandular. That region is highly glandular, and it is overlapped. These two openings are overlapped by two lip-like structures. Lip-like structures, that is called as two pairs of lip-like structures, that is called as one a small lip, inner one, and it is covered by a major lip-like structure. So inner one, it is called as labia minora. It is small in size. They are the paired folds of skin under the labia minora, and it is overlapped by labia majora. So inner wall of the labia minora is more glandular, and the tip region, anterior region of the labia minora is joined together, and at the point of that place there is a small erectile tissue. It is believed to be the rudimentary penis. So it is a erectile tissue, and it is most sensitive and most excitable region. That region it is called as clitoris. So this clitoris and the labia minora also overlapped by another large pair of lip-like structures, that is called as labia majora. And labia majora on outer side, inner side it is glandular, and on outer side it consists of hairs, pubic hairs, and all say it will extend from, and it is hairy and glandular. Then the top of, just above the labia majora, there is a cushiony pad of projected region, and which consists of skin covered by skin and hair. That region it is called as mons pubis. Mons pubis. So here mons pubis is the outer external region. A mass of fatty tissue will be there, and inside that, just below that, there is labia majora. Inside the labia majora, labia minora, and just above the labia minora there is clitoris. Then this cavity encloses two openings, urinary opening as well as the vaginal opening. So the vaginal opening is surrounded by, or will be supported by, partially by a membrane, and that membrane is called as hymen. The center of the hymen, there is a small opening is there, through that only menstrual flow is taking place. But when at the first intercourse, that means when the penis is inserting into the vagina, there can be a chance of rupture, or there will be, the hymen will rupture. So in the initial ages or period and all, or in the previous days and all, the people, they believe that the intact hymen is a symbol of virginity. That means the virgin, when we define a girl as virgin, that means she will possess an intact virgin, and that was an indication of virginity. But later on we come to know that even nowadays the girls are engaged in cycling and jumping and in almost all the muscular activities. So as a result of that vigorous activity, there can be, by nature itself, it can rupture. So nowadays we are not taking this indication as a symptom of virginity and all. So the hymen can be intact or it can be even ruptured also. But there is not that much of relevance in intact hymen to indicate the uh, virginity of a girl. Then clitoris also, already I said, it's a tiny finger-like projection that lies at the junction of labia minora above the urethral opening, and it is the most excitable, this one. So all these parts together consists of the external genitalia. Now we'll move on to another gland, that is one pair of mammary glands. It is present in both male and female, but it is functioning only in female. And this mammary glands is functioning only certain period, that is just at the time of pregnancy. It will start forming more and more gland, and within the glandular secretion more and more milk proteins will be secreted by the influence of hormones, and soon after the delivery, by the suckling of milk by the fetus, by the baby, it will induce to produce milk. So milk ejection will take place soon after the delivery. So this again, the milk, the functioning of the mammary gland will continue till the baby stops feeding the breast milk. Then again, the next pregnancy only it will start functioning. So there is also a discontinuity in the functioning of mammary gland. So when we say it is the presence of functional mammary gland is the characteristics of female organism, and the development of the mammary gland or enlargement of the mammary gland will take place at the time of puberty. But even then, in the pregnancy period only, the glands will start producing the milk protein. Okay, milk proteins and the milk secretion will start. Ejection is at the time of childbirth. So all these things, the milk protein production is by the influence of hormone prolactin. Last year we have learned, and the ejection of milk is by the influence of oxytocin. So there is two different functions are there. The prolactin is for the production of milk protein and secretion of milk proteins, and ejection of milk through the mammary gland is taking place by the influence of oxytocin. That is why oxytocin is called as milk ejecting hormone as well as birth hormone, because oxytocin helps in uterine contraction as well as ejection and as well as ejection of milk through the mammary gland. So here when we study the mammary gland as such, here you can see each mammary gland, it consists of a nipple, a small button-like structure, and that is called as nipple. The tip of or the surface of the nipple, there are approximately 20 openings are there. This openings leads into a long tubular structure that is called as lactiferous duct. So nearly 20 ducts will be there, and this duct immediately will open into a wide balloon-like structure that is called as areola. Wide region only, thickened region, that is called as areola. Then from there again it will leads into mammary duct, and this mammary duct will again further divides into many branches, and it will ends in a small tubular region that is called as mammary tubule, and each it will divides into many branches. Each mammary tubule ends in a balloon-like structure. That balloon-like structure of that one, it is called as alveolus. Okay, so when we are saying that tubular region, first it is nipple. Nipple consists of nearly 20 openings. That openings leads into lactiferous ducts, which opens into a widened region that is called as areola. Areola leads into many branches, and each branch is called a duct system, that it is called as mammary duct. It will branches into many branches, finally ends in a tubular duct, tube region. That tubular region is called as mammary tubules, which ends in balloon-like structures or sac-like structures, that is called as alveolus. Within the inner lining of the alveolus will help in secreting milk proteins, and the secretions collectively will call it as breast milk. So breast milk will be produced as well as stored within the alveolus, and each group of alveolus is enclosed in a lobule. So the mammary lobes, we can say. So nearly 20 lobes will be there, which is packed with the help of, very closely packed with the help of a very thick or very highly concentrated adipose tissue. That means fat tissue. So in the figure itself, you can see, so nearly 20 lobules. Inside the lobules, a collection of alveolus. Each alveolus leads into a mammary tubule. All the mammary tubules from different alveoles leads into a mammary duct. Mammary duct leads into ampulla. Ampulla leads into lactiferous duct. Lactiferous duct opens out through the nipple in the form of opening. So here, this is a brief idea about the functioning of mammary gland. So mammary glands will be there even in male also, but it will become non-functional. In a baby girl also, or in a girl also, the mammary glands will be there, but it will not be enlarged, it will not start functioning. By puberty onwards, the enlargement and more glandular alveolus formation and will takes place at the time of puberty. As a result, the breast enlargement will take place. And when the girl is entering into a marriage life and then the pregnancy happens, or when it starts early stages of pregnancy, that is from 4th or 5th month onwards, the prolactin will be secreted. By the influence of prolactin, the more and more milk proteins will be stored within the alveolus. But even then, the milk will not be will be ejected out. Milk protein in that concentrated form, it will be stored. And that is why more enlargement of breast at the time of pregnancy. Then, as a part of the childbirth, immediately there will be enough and more amount of oxytocin will be released that will induce, and at the same time, the child will the presence of baby, and the baby will suck the nipple. That will induce the ejection of milk through the lactiferous from the alveolus to the mammary tubule, then into mammary duct, then into lactiferous duct, alveolus, lactiferous duct to the nipple. It will be ejected out. Now we'll move on to the next topic, the oogenesis. Oogenesis is a process of conversion of oogonia into functional ova. So that entire process is called as oogenesis. It starts from the fetal stage. Already we have discussed only the fetal stage. Then it will be arrested at the childbirth, 4th month of fetal stage. Then again it will start functioning from puberty till the menopause. Okay, so every month one ova only will be produced from a single primary oocyte. So here you can see the figure, the primordial germ cells, or we can say oogonia. The oogonia, it is diploid in stage, so differentiation, and it will develop into primary oocyte. The primary oocyte will be arrested at the meiosis 1, diakinesis of meiosis 1, prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Then every month a few follicles will develop, and in that one will transform into Graafian follicle. By the time the primary follicle primary oocyte will undergo will complete the first meiosis. As a result, 2 cells will be formed. One large cell that is called as secondary oocyte, which is haploid, and a first polar body will be released. So this oocyte also, the secondary oocyte also will be arrested because second meiosis will not be completed. The second meiosis that process is called as release of secondary oocyte from the Graafian follicle is called as ovulation. But even then also the meiosis will not be completed if that particular secondary oocyte, or we can say ova, is getting a chance to meet with the sperm. Then only the second meiotic division will be completed. Okay, second meiotic division will be completed. So the second oocyte will be converted into functional ova, or another term ootid, OOOTID. So the entire process of transformation of oogonia into primary oocyte into secondary oocyte into functional ova. So the entire process is called as oogenesis, and it is under the control of hormones. So oogenesis, it is said. Now the next one, ovulation. So here it is the gradual transformation. I have marked it. So initial stages it is oogonia, then primary follicle, then into secondary follicle. When it is reaching into the secondary follicle, an outer thick layer that is called as theca, inside it is primary oocyte, then into tertiary follicle, primary oocyte with many layers of follicular cells and a thecal layer, and the primary oocyte is surrounded by zona pellucida. Then by the 14th day, it will mature into Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle means inside that primary oocyte will undergo meiotic division, complete the meiosis one, as a result, secondary oocyte. Okay. Soon after the formation of secondary oocyte, the Graafian follicle will rupture. So the rupture of Graafian follicle and release of ova from that, it is called as ovulation. So this is in your textbook, a very detailed structure of oogenesis it is given, and you have to mention the ploidy also. So it is the oogonia will proliferate into many primary oocyte. So each month primary oocyte will undergo meiosis division, secondary oocyte and first polar body, and secondary oocyte will undergo second meiosis. So the second polar body formation, so they will form into that also unequal. So out of from each primary oocyte, there is only four cells will form. Out of that four, three will be degenerated as polar bodies, and only one functional ova only will be produced. So that is the main difference between male and female spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Spermatogenesis, it is equal division. 4 sperms will be produced from the primary spermatocyte. Here in female, it is from the primary spermatocyte only one functional ova and 3 polar bodies will be formed, which will be degenerated. Now we'll move on to all these functions and all we have explained: liquor folliculi, antrum, then secondary oocyte, first polar body, then metaphase 2 condition, it will be secondary oocyte will be arrested at the metaphase 2. Metaphase 2, then by the when the secondary oocyte after ovulation ova is happened to meet with ova, meet with sperm, then only the metaphase will change into anaphase and telophase, and that results in the release of second polar body as well as the functional ova. Immediately the functional ova, the nucleus of the ova, fuses with the sperm nucleus. That process is called as fertilization. And in this, if the remnant part of the Graafian follicle will change into corpus luteum. Corpus luteum secretes large amount of progesterone, and then the corpus luteum will retain, if the pregnancy has taken place or the fertilization has taken place, means corpus luteum will retain even up to 4th month of pregnancy. Then it will act as the endocrine gland, and at the same time it helps in it helps in providing nutrients as well as exchange of gases and all. Later the corpus luteum function, it will regress in the pregnancy, then the placenta will take over the function. Okay, so early stages the fetal support is carried out by the corpus luteum, which is acting as endocrine gland. Suppose if the fertilization is not taken place, means corpus luteum will regress into corpus albicans and the cycle will be repeated. And the whole process of reproductive cycle will come to an end by the age of 50. That period is called as menopause. So cyclical menstruation is an indication of normal reproductive phase and extends between menarche and menopause. So the next topic we are going to deal with the hormonal action. So male hormonal action we have already explained in the previous session. Now we are moving into the female hormonal action. So it is almost same only, but small changes only. Here you can see in the figure on the right side, it is the hypothalamus secretes the hormone, that is GnRH. GnRH will act on anterior pituitary, same like male. It is also producing 2 types of hormones, FSH and LH. FSH and LH will act on the gonad, that is ovary, and the FSH will help in the development of follicles. So the primary follicle, as a result, the primary follicle within the ovary will develop into secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, Graafian follicle, and then immediately there will be sudden increase in the LH, luteinizing hormone. So this LH will increase, that LH surge will induce the Graafian follicle to release or to rupture and release ova. So the process of ovulation, the development of follicle is by FSH, means ovulation is by LH. Then the remnant part of the Graafian follicle will secrete another hormone. That hormone is called as progesterone. So here the progesterone is maintaining the pregnancy and as well as the endometrial lining, whereas estrogen will regulate. So because the developing follicle, theca interna, when the secondary follicle, that time only theca will be developed. Theca interna will produce estrogen. The estrogen will maintain the secondary sexual characteristics as well as the menstrual cycle in female. And simultaneously, there will be a little bit of inhibin also will be produced by the corpus luteum. And inhibin, same like male reproductive system, there will be having an inhibitory role. So estrogen in the initial stages, it will induce the whole process. It will stimulate the whole process. But if excess amount of estrogen as well as the progesterone always will suppress the excess amount of progesterone will suppress the ovulation. So progesterone is acting as a pregnancy hormone. At the same time, it will act as a contraceptive hormone. So it helps in suppressing the ovulation. So dual functions. Progesterone, the minimum level, it is actually, or in the moderate level, it helps in maintaining the pregnancy. Because more and more endometrial layer will be forming. But too much of progesterone is there means automatically during a pregnancy the ovulation process will stop. Okay, so the menstruation also will stop. So that is by the influence of more and more progesterone, because already fertilization has taken place, one baby is developing inside the uterus. So again, if there is ovulation and again ovulation and fertilization taking place means every month one babies will be added. So it will be complicated. So once the fertilization has taken place means corpus luteum will retain more secretion of progesterone that will maintain the pregnancy. At the same time, further ovulation will be suppressed. So that property nowadays we are using in contraceptive pills, and more progesterone preparations can be administered artificially. So these are the main important points. So few more slides and attaching with this. Here it represents the two types of hormonal action. So you see in the reproductive cycle, in a normal healthy person, the reproductive cycle spans across approximately 0 to 28 days. So early stages, the FSH, LH and estrogen, progesterone, all the hormones will be less. And when the follicle at 10th day, 11th day, 12th day and all, the FSH will increase gradually. FSH will increase gradually. Simultaneously, LH also will increase. But FSH will be maximum in the 13th day. So the maximum development of the follicular development, Graafian follicle. 14th day, suddenly LH will surge. So 14th day, LH will surge. This is estrogen and progesterone, FSH and LH it is given. So LH surge, that results in release of that one. Then gradually it will decrease. And once this fertilization has taken place means estrogen also, because before the ovulation, estrogen also will be very high. But you see here the progesterone peak is, or the progesterone level will be increased when the corpus luteum is maintained within the body. That means around the 25th day, that time only the corpus luteum will be of maximum size. If fertilization taken place means it will retain the correct, the same high level. If no fertilization means corpus luteum will regress, so the progesterone also will regress. That results in peeling of endometrial layer, rupturing of blood vessels, glandular repollution, and the remnant part of that one, that is will expelled out through the vagina in the form of menstrual flow. So here that is a hormonal action. Then the hormone as such, when you are saying estrogen, what is the role of estrogen? It will promote oogenesis, the formation of ova, and follicular growth of the follicle, primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary, then into Graafian, along with FSH. Okay, mainly the development of the follicle is with the help of follicle stimulating hormone. Simultaneously, the developing follicle will start producing estrogen. Then it will exert an anabolic effect on female reproductive tract, uterine tube. That maintenance of the reproductive structures or secondary sexual characters is maintained by estrogen. Then the next one, it is mucosal thickening of the vagina and external genital organs, and all it is by the influence of estrogen. Then the growth of breast and increased deposition of subcutaneous fat, hips, breast, etc., and widening of that is secondary sexual pubic enlargement, pubic region enlargement. All the secondary sexual characters also is influence of this estrogen. Then progesterone means it is by the influence of progesterone, corpus luteum is secreting, and it is a pregnancy maintaining hormone. So 4 hormones are there: FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. So FSH is follicular stimulation, development of the follicle. LH is related with ovulation. Estrogen is related with the maintenance of reproductive structures as well as secondary sexual characters and the development of the ovarian follicles. Plus progesterone is maintenance of pregnancy. So with this, we have come into a conclusion, and thank you very much. We will continue the next topics in the next sessions. Thank you.